Everyone please rise for the national anthem and the presentation of the colors.
Hot, 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 hot. Alert! Halt! Halt! Present! Halt! Right shoulder, pump. Right step. Hot, 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 hot.
My name is Kathy Tedeschi, and I want to welcome everyone here today on this beautiful day. I guess my family and I brought the weather from South Carolina. I never know, what can we say? It's a good thing we rented this tent so that you won't get sunburned. It's typical Virginia weather. Okay, I would like to welcome everybody, and including some honored guests today. I'd like to introduce, to welcome our Attorney General, Eric Holder, and behind him, our former FBI Director, Robert Mueller, and next to him, TSA Director John Pistole, and beside him is our former Presidential Commission head, Ann McLaughlin Korologos, and then we have Chaplain Randall back over here, and I'm never going to get all of your names, your titles right. I'll just call him that nice man that I met in Lockerbie. He's Minister David Mundell. Yeah, I know his name, but Right Honorable, whatever. Yeah. and Chief Constable Ian Livingstone from Police Scotland, and the Lord Advocate Frank Mulholland up there next to this beautiful girl who happens to be my daughter, and then Mary Kay Stratus and Frank Dugan up here. And so we all welcome you. And sitting on the front row, we have the Ambassador for Westmacott, who represents the Embassy of Great Britain, and next to him is Chief of Staff at the White House, Dennis McDonough, and then yeah. Huh? Well, she's not. Yeah, but next to him is Naismith. Yeah. And then Lisa Monaco as National Security Advisor, and John Carlin, and I don't know who I'm missing here. I have down here Ronald Machen Jr., Valerie Parley. I know that Colonel Cheatham is not there because I know he's not there, and Alice Abdullah from the State Department, and Suleiman Abulhul is the chargé from Libya, and Ali Ajuli is the former ambassador from Libya. And we welcome all of them, and I will try to sit down now, but I do want to say that there are a couple of mistakes in the program, and we apologize for that. One I can tell you right away is that it says there's going to be the presentation of the colors and the national anthem again. That's wrong. We're not having it twice, but the choir is going to sing a different song down there where it says they are going to sing. And then there are other mistakes, something with the donors, and I apologize for anything like that. There are some people were unable to be here at the last minute, and so some of the readers were substituted and stuff like that. Things happen, and so anyway, I'm glad that the people that could make it were here, and just know that we're all human and there were mistakes made. So with that, I'd like to introduce the chaplain, Captain Ted Randall, and he would like to do our invocation. Thank you.
Let us pray. Creator God, we pause this moment to recognize your presence here, to seek your blessing on this solemn celebration. It is in a spirit of love and community that we gather this day to remember, as we remember the lives lost and the lives forever changed. May we also remember your great love. May we remember that even in our darkest of days, you promise to sustain us, to give us strength, and to provide us with a deep and abiding peace. May this ceremony preserve the memory of those who died, and may it kindle anew in each of us a similar love for one another, for our nation, and the cause of freedom and peace throughout the world. I ask this in your name and for your glory. Amen.
The Common Prayer for Peace was co-authored by Tiffany Steinwerk, Dean of Hendricks Chapel, and Reverend Stanley Stoddart of the Church of Drifesdale in Lockerbie. This 142-word prayer is being read at all memorials today, as well as by thousands of people privately, to remember those who were killed on Pan Am 103, as well as all those whose lives have been touched by terrorism. At this time, I invite anyone who is part of the Syracuse University to rise and say the prayer with me. We gather as a global community, uniquely woven together by our persistent pursuit of hope. Rising from the ashes of tragedy, we proclaim our commitment to creating a better, more just world. In remembering our past, may we ignite a fierce passion for the future that propels us beyond the boundaries of division and unites us in the common pursuit of life's most precious gifts: faith, hope, and love. Today, in the shadow of the longest night of the year, we confidently declare that love and life shall always triumph over fear and violence. Help us to know that the light of love can never be extinguished as long as we tend to it by acts of compassion, justice, peace, and reconciliation. Encourage us that by joining together, we can create a living legacy through our actions in the world. Thank you. At this time, we would like to honor a moment of silence.
We remember them.
John Michael Gerard Ahern. Sarah Margaret Aker. John David Ackerman. Ronald Eli Alexander. Thomas
Joseph Emmerman, Martin Louis Affelbaum, Rachel Marie Esrelsky, Judith Ellen Bernstein Atkinson, our sister, William Garrettson Atkinson III, our brother, Elizabeth Nicole Avoyne, Jerry Don Averitt, Claire Louise Bakiochi, Harry Michael Bainbridge, Stuart Murray Barclay, Jean Mary Bell.
Julian McBain Benello, Lawrence Ray Bennett, Philip Vernon Bergstrom, Alistair David Berkeley, Michael Stewart Bernstein, Stephen Russell Burrell, Noel Liddy Birdie, Surinda Mohan Bahati, Kenneth John Bissett, Diane Ann Boatman Fuller, Stephen John Boland, Glenn John Bouclay, Paula Marie Alderman Bouclay, Nicole Elise Boulanger, and my son, Gregory Cabasso.
We remember them. Francis Boyer, Nicholas Bright, Daniel Solomon Browner Beyer, Colleen Renee Brunner, Timothy Guy Berman, Michael Warren Buser, Warren Max Buser, Lorraine Francis Buser Halsch, William Martin Cadman, Fabiana Benvenuto de Cafferon, Hernan Luis Cafferon, Valerie Kennedy, Timothy Michael Cardwell, Richard Anthony Colley, Theodora Eugenia Cohen.
We remember them. Aaron Michael Coker, Jason Michael Coker, Gary Leonard Colasanti, Bridget Concannon, Sean Concannon, Thomas Concannon, Tracy Jane Corner, Scott Marsh Corey, Willis Larry Corsey, John Binning Comic, Joseph Patrick Curry, Gretchen Joyce Dater, Gabrielle Delaripa, Joyce Christine Damaro, and my uncle, Stephen Lee Butler.
We remember them. Our uncle, Bernd Vilmar Carlson, Gianna Franca DiNardo, Peter Thomas Stanley Dix, Om Dixit, Shanti Dixit, David Scott Dornstein, Michael Joseph Doyle,
Edgar Howard Eggleston III, Siv Ulla Engstrom, Turan Ergin, Charles Thomas Fisher IV, Joanne Flanagan, Kathleen Mary Flanagan, Thomas Brown Flanagan, Clayton Lee Flick.
We remember them. My grandfather, Frank Chula, John Patrick Flynn, Arthur Fondler, Robert Gerard Fortune, Stacy Denise Franklin, Paul Stephen Matthew Freeman, James Ralph Fuller,
Ebolia Gabor, Amy Beth Gallagher, Matthew Kevin Gannon, Kenneth Raymond Gorzinski, Paul Isaac Garrett, Kenneth James Gibson, Andrew Christopher Gillies Wright, Olive Lenora Gordon.
We remember them. My family's friend, Patricia Mary Coyle, Linda Susan Gordon Gorgash, Anne Madeline Gorgash, Loretta Ann Gorgash, David J. Gould, Andre Nikolai Gavorgian, Nicola Jane Hall, Lynn Carol Hartunian, Dora Henrietta Henry, Maurice Peter Henry, Pamela Elaine Herbert, Rodney Peter Hilbert, Alfred Hill, Catherine Augusta Hollister, Josephine Lisa Hudson.
We remember them. Our dad and his grandfather, William and Alan Daniels. Melina Christina Hudson. Sophie Elette Miriam Hudson. Karen Lee Hunt. Roger Elwood Hurst. Elizabeth Sophie Ivell. Khalid Nazir Jafar. Robert Van Houten Jeck.
Paul Evron Jeffries, Rachel Jeffries, Kathleen Mary German, Mary Lincoln Johnson, Timothy Barron Johnson, Christopher Andrew Jones, Julianne Francis Kelly.
We remember them. My beloved sister, Shannon Davis, J. Joseph Kingham, Patricia Ann Klein, Elke Etha Coyne, Minas Christopher Kulakundis, Mary Browell Lancaster, Ronald Albert Lariviere, Maria Nieves Laracoecha, Robert Milton Leckberg, William Chase Lehrer Jr., Wendy Ann Lincoln, Lloyd David Ludlow, Maria Theresia Lurbke, William John McAllister, Lilibeth Tobila Makaluli.
We remember them. My husband, William David Giebler, Jr., William Edward Mack, James Bruce McQuarrie, Douglas Eugene Malacote, Wendy Gay Forsyth Malacote, Elizabeth Lillian Marek, Louis Anthony Marengo, Noel George Martin, Diane Marie Maslowski, Daniel Emmett McCarthy, Robert Eugene McCullum, Charles Dennis McKee, Bernard Joseph McLaughlin, Jane Susan Melber, John Merrill.
We remember them. My husband, Anthony Lacey Hawkins, Susan Marie Miazga, Joseph Kenneth Miller, Jewel Courtney Mitchell, Jane Ann Morgan, Eva Ingeborg Morrison, Helga Rachel Mosey, Ingrid Elizabeth Svensson Mulroy, John Mulroy, Sean Kevin Mulroy, Mary Geraldine Murphy, Jean Atkin Murray, Karen Elizabeth Noonan, Daniel Emmett O'Connor, Mary Denise O'Neill.
My uncle, Timothy Barron Johnson, Keisha Whedon, Ann Lindsay Otanasic, Brianni Elise Owen, Gwyneth Yvonne Margaret Owen, Robert Italo Panuco, Christos Michael Papadopoulos, Peter Raymond Pierce, Michael C. Pescatore, Sarah Susanna Buchanan Phillips, Frederick Sanford Phillips, James Andrew Campbell Pitt, David Platt, Walter Leonard Porter, Pamela Lynn Posen.
We remember them. My father, Gregory Kosmowski, William Pugh, Estrella Guillen, Anmol Rotan, Garima Rotan, Saruchi Rotan, Anita Reeves, Mark Rain, Jocelyn Reyna, Diane Renkevitz, Louise Rogers, Adina Roller, James Roller, Susanna Roller, Hannah Maria Root.
We remember them: Alexander Lowenstein, Saul Mark Rosen, Andrea Victoria Rosenthal, Daniel Peter Rosenthal, Myra Josephine Royal, Arnaud David Rubin, Elise Jean Saraceni, Scott Christopher Saunders, Teresa Elizabeth Jane Saunders, Johannes Otto Schnabel, Robert Thomas Slagater, Thomas Britton Schultz, Sally Elizabeth Scott, Amy Elizabeth Shapiro, Mridula Shastri.
We remember our son, uncle, and brother, Richard Paul Minetti, Laura Abigail Owens, Martha Ives Owens, Robert Plack Owens, Sarah Rebecca Owens, Joan Xingshang, Irving Stanley Siegel, Martin Bernard Christopher Simpson, Erja Skanova Skabo, Cynthia Jones Smith, Ingrid Anita Smith, James Alvin Smith, Mary Edna Smith, John Somerville, Lindsay Ann Somerville.
We remember them. My uncle, Rajesh Tarsus Priskel Ramses. Paul Somerville. Rosalind Hanny Later Somerville. Geraldine Ann Stevenson. Hannah Louise Stevenson. John Charles Stevenson. Rachel Helen Stevenson. Charlotte Ann Stinnett. Michael Gary Stinnett. Stacy Leanne Stinnett. James Ralph Stowe. Elia G. Stratus. Anthony Selwyn Swan. Flora McDonald Margaret Swire. Mark Alex Taker.
We remember them all.
Hidekazu Tamika, Andrew Alexander Tehran, Eva Anthony Thomas, Jonathan Ryan Thomas, LaWanda Thomas, Mark Lawrence Tobin, David William Trimmersmith,
Alexia Catherine Saris, Barry Joseph Valentino, Thomas Floro Van Tivenhoven, Assad Aidi Vejdani, Milutin Velimirovic, Nicholas Andreas Vranos, Peter Patrizio Voku, Raymond Ronald Wagner.
We remember them. Janina Josepha Wado, Thomas Edwin Walker, Jerome Lee Weston, Jonathan White, Bonnie Lee Williams, Brittany Lee Williams, Eric John Williams, George Watterson Williams, Stephanie Lee Williams, Miriam Luby Wolf, Chelsea Marie Woods, Deidre Lynn Woods, Joe Nathan Woods, Joe Nathan Woods Jr., Mark James Swinenberg. It was my privilege to represent all 270 victims.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Kay Stratus. I'm the widow of passenger Elias Stratus. And it is my honor to introduce our first speaker today, former FBI Director Robert Mueller. I was told by several sources that Mr. Mueller prefers not to have long introductions, and he eschews pomp and circumstance, but I apologize in advance because I may have to make an exception here because Mr. Mueller's service to our country, and specifically to Pan Am 103 families, deserves sharing with you. Director Mueller has been a good friend to the families of Pan Am 103. For many years, he's had a personal interest in our case since its inception, and was a prosecutor for the Justice Department when the case was first brought in 1991. He has kept in touch with the U.S. Families Group for all the 12 years when he was serving as director of the FBI, offering what information he could. Always offering encouragement, but never false encouragement. So when he expresses optimism, we know to take that as valid and encouraging. He has been described as a very intense person, and this certainly bode well for our case. Mr. Mueller is a decorated officer in the Marine Corps who served in Vietnam and has had a career as a federal prosecutor who, as Assistant Attorney General, traveled to Scotland during the investigation and oversaw the U.S. indictments of McGrahy and FEMA. As acting Deputy Attorney General, he was present with the families who were in Washington, D.C. to observe the Scottish verdict on closed-circuit TV. He served as director of the FBI from September 2001 until September 2013. And during that time, he ensured that the Pan Am 103 investigation remained a high priority for the FBI. I know that other family members join me in thanking Mr. Mueller for the time he took to meet with us to give us updates. And recently he gave a very rare interview to the BBC Scotland for a documentary on the 25th anniversary of Pan Am 103. By those who have worked with him, he is described as a devoted and dedicated public servant. I know personally a bit about his dedication and devotion, having welcomed him here to the cairn for many of our memorial services on bitter, cold December 21st. And he braved the cold with us as we gathered to remember our loved ones. I think there's even a picture of him up on our website, shivering in the cold with us, but it never deterred him from bringing his message to us. In comparison, I'm glad we have this balmy weather today in which we can welcome him, and I'm honored to welcome, and join me in welcoming, Robert Mueller.
Thank you, Mary Kay, for that kind introduction. I hold you personally responsible for the weather today. Congratulations. Now, it has been said that time heals all wounds, but you here know that that is not necessarily true. I always remember, will never forget, one of the visits I made to Lockerbie, where I had the occasion to see the small wooden warehouse in which were stored the various effects of your loved ones. A white sneaker, a Syracuse sweatshirt, Christmas presents, photographs, and these ordinary items brought home to me and came to symbolize for me your pain and your loss, pain and loss that have not diminished even after so many years. And they brought home to me the certainty that not all losses are equal. In those early days, you lived the words of King David from Psalm 11. Fly away like a bird to the mountain, for the wicked have drawn their bows and aimed their arrows to shoot from the shadows at good people. And there is nothing a good person can do when everything falls apart. And yet you did not fly away. You did not hide, but you stood your ground and maintained the courage of your convictions day after day and year after year. You sought answers and accountability You sought solace through memorials, lovingly undertaken by so many around the world, and you worked diligently to ensure that other families would not have to endure such suffering. And through your actions, through the lives you have led and the choices you have made, we see that there is much a good person can do when the world falls apart. You created light out of darkness, and out of that light has come a lasting legacy. A legacy of courage in the face of the greatest adversity, a legacy of solidarity and friendship in the face of isolation and loneliness, a legacy of peace and understanding in the face of hatred. And there can be no greater legacy than that. For many years now, we have stood together to mark this dark day. And as we do so, we mark your strength and we mark your steadfastness. We mark the love between parent and child, husband and wife, sister and brother, friends and family alike. And we mark the friendship of like nations united in a common cause. And though time cannot heal all wounds, and yet time breathes and shifts with the seasons, much like the storms of winter herald the buds of spring and the warmth of the sun. And time does swallow pain and burnishes the sweetest of memories. Time ensures that nothing remains firmly in place, nothing but the promise of better days to come, the promise of hope and the promise of light. And today may the thought of your loved one bring a smile to your lips. May you feel the warmth of those who have blessed your lives, even for too brief a time. And may we continue to do everything in our power to ensure a world that is safe and secure for all. And may God bless you, may God bless your families, and may God bless your loved ones. Thank you.
I let him get away too fast. Victims of Pan Am Flight 103, our organization, is based on 4 objectives: seeking the truth, providing emotional support, improving aviation security and safety, and combating terrorism. There is an award that we set aside for some special recipients. It's called Keeping the Spirit Alive. And it was developed to recognize the person or persons who over a long period of time have succeeded in keeping the government and public aware of the important lessons learned from this terrorist action. We honor those working with the Victims of Pan Am Flight 103 organization to achieve these goals, all the while remembering those lost in the Lockerbie bombing by keeping their spirits alive. I would like at this time to present this award to Robert Mueller. Thank you for everything for
us. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, I guess. I have another introduction, much like Mary Kay's, of a longtime friend of the Pan Am families. The Attorney General of the United States is, to my mind, the head of the most important government agency. He's the nation's top lawyer. Much like Frank Mulholland, he doesn't have a title. Like he's not called Right Reverend, Right Honorable, whatever it is, Lord Advocate. They don't even call our Attorney General a secretary. But the department, which has thousands and thousands of lawyers, many of whom are here today, by the way, and FBI members are here today. But it's an agency that, as I said, to some of us it's the most important. If you ask someone what the word justice means, I asked 10 people out there, you'd probably get at least 5 different answers. And another 5 would Google it and see what Wikipedia says justice means. But we know what it means. We have an innate feeling of what it is. It's the main reason our group was formed. And we're not there yet. But we're very close. And we're close because of people like Eric Holder, who's worked on this case from the very beginning. And he's kept us apprised of what was going on to the extent he could. He's been here several times. Last year, weather was terrible, and then he had to leave because he said his boss had called a meeting. Now, if you're in the cabinet, you know who the boss is. So he had a good excuse to go, but he turned around and he said, "I'll be here next year," and he is. We're very honored to have the chief lawyer of the United States and a longtime friend of the families. Let me give you Eric Holder.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Frank, for those kind words and for your many years of service and your leadership alongside your fellow members of the families of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103. I'd also like to recognize just a few of the many dedicated public servants who are here today, including my dear friend, former FBI Director Bob Mueller, who's been involved with this case since he led the Justice Department's criminal division more than 2 decades ago. Brian Murtaugh, a tenacious former Justice Department prosecutor from the United States Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., who worked tirelessly on this case for over 20 years. U.S. Attorney Rick Hartunian of the Northern District of New York, whose sister was aboard Flight 103 on that fateful night, and who became an original member of the victims group that called for a presidential commission on airport security. I know that Rick's mother, Joanne, and his sister, Patricia, and their families are among the many family members who are in the crowd today. I had a chance to meet with them yesterday in the Justice Department. And I consider it an honor to join all of you once again for this important annual remembrance. Although a quarter century has passed since the world was shaken and so many lives were devastated by a heinous and cowardly act of terror, no amount of distance or time can ease the pain or erase the loss that was inflicted on that day. Even now, it remains difficult to comprehend the magnitude of such a senseless crime, which claimed the lives of 259 innocent men, women, and children in the skies above Scotland, along with the lives of 11 residents of the peaceful town of Lockerbie. Now, some of the victims were traveling to the United States for the very first time. Some were enjoying quiet evenings with their families. Some were on their way to visit with friends and relatives. Some were simply trying to come home. And although their respective journeys and their individual lives were cut tragically short, all continue to be dearly loved and deeply missed by everyone who knew them, and especially by those who come together on this patch of what is truly hallowed ground each year to pay tribute to the lives that were stolen and to heal those that were irreparably changed. Now, we will always remember the heartache, the devastation, and the pain that was etched into our collective memory on the 21st of December, 1988. But we also recall, as we gather each year, the tremendous generosity of the Scottish people, and particularly the people of Lockerbie, who despite their own losses opened their homes to the families of victims who streamed into that small town from around the world in the days after the bombing. In the midst of their anguish, these generous men and women gave what comfort they could offer and shared what solace they could provide. We recall the determination that animated families and victim advocates who joined together to seek answers and understanding. Some of these passionate individuals, including many of the current and former FBI agents, Justice Department prosecutors, and other officials who are with us today, helped selflessly define the quest for justice in the aftermath of this crime as their life's work. But more than anything, as we assemble in this place of remembrance year after year, we recall the moments of unity and of love that have arisen from the grief that we share. We remember the occasions that have brought this community together, not only in mourning, but in search of healing and in search of hope, and in celebration of the extraordinary lives that bind us together. We keep calling for change and fighting for justice on behalf of those no longer with us. We rededicate ourselves and our nation to the qualities that define the men and the women that we lost. And we continue to be drawn together every year on this date. Faces old and faces new, friends long departed, and members of fresh generations, including some who bear the names of absent loved ones, to lend our voices to this solemn memorial, to hear stories, and to exchange joyous memories, and to be part of a community that, a quarter century after that terrible day, is still striving to build from an unspeakable evil a lasting legacy of compassion, of fellowship, and yes, of love. Today, this legacy is all around us, and it is very much alive. It lives in the resolve that brings us together and pushes us forward each day. It persists in our unfinished but ongoing work to see that justice is done and to ensure that those who commit acts of terror are held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. And it endures in our determination to secure a brighter future for ourselves and our fellow citizens, a future that is free from hatred and the senseless destruction that has touched your lives and far too many others. May our continuing efforts serve as a fitting monument to those who were taken from us 25 years ago. May we never tire in our work to forge a society and a world that are worthy of the empathy and grace that unites this remarkable group. And may God bless the memories of those that we've lost, the cause of justice that we are humbled to serve, and the great nation that we will forever hold the victims of Pan Am 103 in our hearts, and each of the loving families as well that we hold near and dear in our hearts. Thank you all.
The next thing on our program is playing taps and the wreath laying. I would ask that everybody stand for that, and we'll have the wreath laying first, actually, and then the taps. You may be seated. The next part in the program is we have a couple of awards to give out, and it says me, but I'm actually not going to hand them out, and I would ask for Glenn Johnson and Brian Flynn, if they would, to please come forward and help me with this next part of the program.
There have been very many people who have been able to devote their talents to helping this organization, people that we do not always acknowledge. And I'd like to take this time to take a couple and let them know how much we really appreciate what they've done. They've worked with our organization for a long time and been of great support. Wendy and Steve Sufjack, they have done so much for us in ways in which they do not receive recognition. Wendy took our little newsletter and in 3 years created it into the news that we are able to publish not only for our families, but also for others in the government and people who want to help us in our efforts. It is a worthy publication of which everyone is aware of. Also, every time that we've been able to put on a major event, they have been working very diligently to prepare and let everyone see what we are about. If you take a look today at the program, you'll see the quality. There is a lot of love and work that has gone into this. And so Steve, Wendy, would you come forward? I'd like to show appreciation from the organization.
The first thing I'd like to do is to thank the victims of Pan Am 103. It's amazing when ordinary people come together by a tragic event, how they can accomplish extraordinary things. And Mary Kay and Frank and the group of families that have come together through the years have inspired us, our family, and always given us support, so I want to thank them. But today, I'm quite honored to sit here and to pay tribute to my mother. Now that's quite stressful for anybody. So you might imagine I better not screw this up. Kathleen has been a tireless crusader from the moment she learned that her son was murdered aboard Pan Am Flight 103. When she first heard about what at the moment was called an accident, she knew seconds later that it was a bombing. Mothers have an instinct about these things. Also, suspicious mothers have especially strong instinct about such things. I remember more than 2 weeks after the bombing, we went over to Lockerbie, and I saw my mother cross the room and went over and start lecturing Margaret Thatcher about how justice had to be done. And I thought, my God, what is she doing? But that was just her getting started. Her good friend, Anne McLaughlin Corologis, who at that time was Secretary of Labor under President Reagan, I remember Kathleen on the phone with her. We weren't getting much sleep back then. Many of the families remember that, so I was half asleep on the couch. And I remember her yelling at her friend, or I guess was her friend before that, I'm not sure what happened after, saying, "I will not have my son die in vain. Justice has to be done." I knew then, even though my brother was dead, that our lives were going to change. So when Anne was asked to lead the commission, the Presidential Commission, to investigate what happened and how it could have been prevented, she knew she had no choice, or Kathleen would have, in fact, killed her as well. That year, the family fortunately moved to Washington in 1989, very early that year, by coincidence or by serendipity. Kathleen helped work with Frank and Anne on the commission as a pseudo-staff member. She also walked the walls of Congress and quickly became a force. She also made many trips back to New York, where she had lived previously, to join protests at the UN. Kathleen, as Glenda just said, people in these situations often use their gifts for different things. Kathleen had many gifts, and one of which was imposed upon her by the nuns at Marymount, and that was the gift of the pen. Kathleen wrote op-eds for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the London Telegraph, Daily Record, and dozens of others. She made over hundreds of TV and radio appearances, including a very memorable one, which some of you may remember, where she accomplished the impossible. She shamed Alan Dershowitz on the Today Show, which is not an easy feat. Alan was considering supporting McGrahy and FEMA and quickly changed his mind after facing Kathleen on the Today Show. Kathleen also then served as a commissioner in the Presidential Commission on Aviation Security, representing the families of victims of Pan Am 103. During the trial, she told her husband, "We're going to Camp Zeist and we're not leaving until there's a verdict." which she did. However, on the day of the verdict against McGrahy, Kathleen was scheduled for breast cancer surgery. After watching the verdict on closed-circuit television, she opted in a cab to get to her appointment. The verdict was too important, and her critical surgery would have to wait. I remember the doctor saying, "Why can't you get here on time?" Of course, she made her son and her daughter-in-law go to campsite to bear witness. And when we went there, we were given very specific instructions on what our messaging points were, which appeared the next day in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Kathleen has used her gifts and her passion to pursue justice, honor her son, protect others from the acts of terrorism, but also to honor her country. And with all this, she still managed to be a great mom. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Mary Lou Chula's niece, and she is going to perform a Beyonce song, probably as good or better as Beyonce. Okay.
I lived each day until I died. I know that I meant something in somebody's life. The hearts I have touched will be the proof that I lived, that I made a difference. And this world will see I was here. I lived, I loved, I was here. I did, I've done everything that I wanted, and it was more than I thought it would be. I will leave my mark so everyone will know I was here. I lived, I loved, I was here. I did, I've done everything that I wanted, and it was more than I thought it would be. I will leave my mark so everyone will know I was here. I just want them to know I gave my all, did my best, brought someone some happiness, left this world a little better just because I was here. I was here. I lived. I was here. I was here. I was here. What will you do? I was here.
Thank you, Diane. It was beautiful. It really, really was. In addition to thanking Diane, I want to make sure I thank the Pender Choir. They first started singing for us because I think Mary Kay used to go to that church many, many years ago when she lived in Virginia, and so she got the connection started, and they've been coming back ever since. And I mean, they've been wonderful. And we have a new piper this. Yes, thank you. And we have a new piper this year, Ray Bilter. Our other piper that we've had the last few years has injured his hand, and I don't even know if he will be able to continue, but I think Ray did a magnificent job, and if he can continue with us, great. And then we will have two more Scottish pipers a little bit later, and if they want to come back, I'll be glad to have them come back again too. But y'all will hear them later. Anyway, I do want to make note of the people that have helped us a lot in this service, and the Arlington people that have bent over backwards, and we've already mentioned Wendy and Steve, and we couldn't do this by ourselves, Melanie and me. So anyway, now our next. It says in the program that the next speaker will be FBI Director James Comey. Well, there are some things that changed in this program. He is out of town, and so he sends his regrets, and so that was an unavoidable thing that happened after the program had been printed. So anyway, he is not here. But I get to introduce our next speaker, who is the head of the TSA, and he's a wonderful man that has been coming for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years, maybe, like that. And he has been the TSA administrator since July 2010, and he's in charge of 450 airports across the United States and the Air Marshal program, and for security for highways and railroads and all kinds of transit systems and stuff. And before that, he was an FBI agent, so we got plenty of FBI guys here, and all former and present. And I wish I talked to him earlier because this year was kind of a rough year for him, because this is the first time that in the TSA history that they have lost an agent in the line of duty in Hernandez, right? And so we offer our condolences to Mr. Pistole, but on that, and but I would like to welcome TSA Director John Pistole right now.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for that introduction, and it's good to be here once again as we gather together to remember those souls that were lost that fateful day 25 years ago now. And it's good to see so many people again, whether you've come from Scotland or from Syracuse or anywhere else for that matter, welcome. These grounds at Arlington National Cemetery know no borders. It belongs to you, it belongs to all of us. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak once again as we commemorate that event and the lives that were lost. As we noted in ceremonies past, there's nothing we can say to undo the horror or the lasting damage caused by the monstrous and cowardly act of terror carried out over Lockerbie. Yet we see the incredible ability of the human spirit to heal and grow in the hopeful eyes and loving faces of our children and our grandchildren, and there is some comfort. The healing that began in the weeks and months following that unspeakable act will continue as young ones grow older and are taught to carry forward the memories of those we honor here today. So even though the pain of your loss may be somewhat tempered by the 25 years that have gone by, be assured that all of us here today remain fully committed in our search for the truth and our desire to hold everyone accountable for their crimes. Your advocacy in support of earning justice for your loved ones is an inspiration, and it honors them. And for those of you who travel every day, whether it is for business, to be with family, or simply to explore the wonders of our world, you deserve to do so safely and securely. This is a small but steady victory over the hatred that is carried out by terrorists throughout the world. Since being called into service following the atrocity of September 11th, the men and women of the Transportation Security Administration have dedicated themselves to strengthening aviation security and protecting our freedom to travel. We are equally dedicated to safeguarding the free flow of goods and helping the world's economy thrive and do business free from the destructive desires of criminals and terrorists alike. The ongoing vigilance of the global law enforcement community teaches us lessons that help to strengthen our international aviation security efforts and make it less likely that our adversaries can succeed. Focusing our resources in such a way as to mitigate risk is enabling us to stay ahead of those who remain determined to strike fear into the lives of good and decent people. A few weeks ago, we saw the world come together to mourn the loss and celebrate the life of the remarkable Nelson Mandela. In his struggle, we were reminded that the gears of justice may, at times, move quite slowly. But it was also affirmed that in the end, good wins over evil. It is this same spirit that our search for justice must remain unstoppable. We owe that to each of you and to the families you have built, and in many cases, rebuilt. Nobody can ever return what was taken from you that night, but we can and we will continue to work and to fight for each of you. Thank you, and may God bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and give you peace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pistol, for your remarks. At this time, I am very pleased and honored to introduce our next guest, the Right Honorable David Mundell, Member of Parliament and the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Scotland. David Gordon Mundell is a member of the Parliament representing the Scottish constituency of Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale, and Tweedale at Westminster. Mr. Mundell was born in Dumfries and grew up in Newton Wamphray and in Lockerbie. He went to Lockerbie Academy and was head boy, which is the equivalent of president of his class. He studied law at the University of Edinburgh and gained a diploma in legal practice there. He received an MBA from the University of Strathclyde Business School. He worked as a solicitor and then joined in 1991 BT, a British multinational telecommunications services company, one of the largest in the world, as group legal advisor for Scotland. He became BT Scotland's head of national affairs, remaining with BT until becoming a member of Scottish Parliament. Mr. Mundell was elected to the Scottish Parliament in 1999 and in 2003 as a list member of the Scottish Parliament for the South of Scotland. Being the sole Conservative representing Scottish constituency, Mr. Mundell quickly gained public attention relative to the newly elected MPs. He was appointed by David Cameron to the Shadow Cabinet as Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland in December of 2005, a post in which he served until 2010, until the 2010 general election in the UK, at which time Mr. Mundell assumed the role of Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Scotland. Mr. Mundell has been a strong supporter of the Syracuse Lockerbie Scholarships, which support Lockerbie Academy students to study at Syracuse University each year. The connections that are made by these young people are a good indication of the strong bonds between our countries that Mr. Mundell has nurtured through his career. Mr. Mundell has come to Syracuse University several times, most recently this past October during Remembrance Week for the observances there that took place marking the 25th anniversary of Pan Am 103. He took the time to attend our Victims of Pan Am 103 annual board meeting for our membership and took part in a panel of Scottish representatives as they made their remarks and answered our questions. We are very grateful to Mr. Mundell that he was able to join us at that time and for his interest in our story, in our case. Please join me in welcoming the Right Honorable David Mundell.
Thank you very much indeed. As someone who grew up in Lockerbie, attended Lockerbie Academy, and has the privilege of representing my hometown in Parliament, it is an honour for me to be here today to represent both my community and my country, to demonstrate our solidarity with you on a day of remembrance, a day of reflection, and a day too for looking forward. I want you to know that you are in the thoughts and prayers of people in and around Lockerbie and across the United Kingdom, as church services are going on simultaneously with this event in Drysdale Parish Church in Lockerbie and in Westminster Abbey. And although compared to this balmy afternoon here in Arlington, it is cold and very wet back in Scotland today, the warmth of our feeling towards everyone here in the United States affected by the events of the 21st of December 1988 remains as strong as it was on those first days and weeks when many present visited Lockerbie for the first time. The Lockerbie air disaster remains the largest ever loss of life in a single event in the United Kingdom. Like everybody from the Lockerbie area, I remember exactly where I was when I heard the news and the emotions I felt as the events unfolded. That is, however, nothing to what you and families back in the UK and other parts of the world have had to bear. To lose a loved one in an unexpected fatality, particularly a young person, is heartbreaking. But to do so under an unprecedented global media spotlight, which has lasted all of these 25 years, is beyond compare. And for that, you, along with the townspeople of Lockerbie and everyone else caught in these events, have our utmost admiration and respect. Now, many people in and around Lockerbie never have and never will speak openly of these events, although they have been deeply affected by them and the loss of anonymity for our small town. On behalf of them and everyone else in and around Lockerbie, I offer you our continuing sympathy for your loss, our gratitude for the friendships forged and the bonds strengthened, and our determination to continue to support you in the years ahead. Thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to read a message from our British Prime Minister, David Cameron. Mr. Cameron says, "The loss of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie at 7:03 p.m. UK time on the evening of 21st December 1988 was a shocking event. A loss made more poignant still by being so close to Christmas. Lockerbie remains one of the worst aviation disasters in history and the deadliest act of terrorism ever committed in the United Kingdom. Although 25 years have passed, memories of the 243 passengers, 16 crew and 11 Lockerbie residents who have lost their lives on that terrible night have not dimmed. Over the last quarter of a century, much attention has been focused on the perpetrators of the atrocity. Today, our thoughts turn to its victims and to those whose lives have been touched and but changed by what happened at Lockerbie that night. To families, friends, neighbours, loved ones, and all those caught up in the painful process of recovery, let us say to them, our admiration for you is unconditional, for the fortitude and resilience you have shown, for the determination never to give up. You have shown that terrorist acts cannot crush the human spirit, and that is why terrorism will never prevail. And even in the darkest moments of grief, it is possible to glimpse the flickering flame of hope. The tragedy of Pan Am 103 continues to forge a strong bond between Lockerbie Academy and Syracuse University. Syracuse lost 35 of its own that fateful evening. Nothing can restore the promise of those young lives cut short. Yet their memory is honoured by the scholarship Syracuse awards each year to 2 Lockerbie students and 35 of its own undergraduates. They represent a growing band of beneficiaries, each given the chance to fulfil their own youthful promise. This is the lasting and optimistic legacy bequeathed to future generations on behalf of those who lost their lives on this day 25 years ago and who we remember here today. Thank you.
a number of the press people ask me, they say, "You're not a family member, how'd you get involved in this thing?" And the answer is always, there was this woman named Anne McLaughlin. Anne McLaughlin, as somebody mentioned before, had been appointed by President Reagan to be the chair of the commission that was going to look into how this happened. Not who did it, how it happened. Trying to make sure that it didn't happen again. I was told by the executive director that Anne hired also that my job was going to be the most important because the families were angry and suspicious, and if they didn't trust me, then they wouldn't trust the commission, and anything that the commission wrote would have a shadow over it. And I took that to heart. I stayed down there every night. I hadn't met Faye yet, so I had nowhere to come home to, and I'd stay down there and I'd call family members. And I'd call the ones that I knew were the most suspicious and the ones that were most troubled. And I didn't tell them anything. We didn't know anything at that time. I just listened. And I listened and listened and listened and learned a lot and came to love those people. The report that was written is classic. It's, as commissions go, somebody called it the Cadillac of commissions. It's the President's Commission on Aviation Security and Terrorism. You can Google it. It has stood the test of time for 25 years. Other commissions always come in to us and try and see how we did what we did, and especially how we dealt with the families. I remember the family liaison from the 9/11 Commission was a true family member. As opposed to me, it was a woman who lost her husband. And she brought the staff down, and that she wanted to know, how come your commission got along with your family members as well as you did? And I said, well, we didn't in the beginning, but at the end, I think they trusted us. And that was the basis of this report. The report is an amazing report. Anne McLaughlin is an amazing person. She's probably one of the most accomplished women in America. She's been on the boards of General Motors, American Airlines, Microsoft, Kellogg. She was chairman of the Rand Corporation, chairman of Aspen Institute. You can Google her also. She also had an extensive government career. In addition to being Secretary of Labor, I was an Assistant Secretary of Labor and unemployed at the time the commission started. And when she said, would I be interested in this, I said yes, and that was my beginning. But in addition to Secretary of Labor, she was an Undersecretary at Interior. She was Undersecretary at Department of Treasury. She's had a number of incredibly important jobs. But I was at a dinner where she was being honored along with her husband, Tom Korologos. She committed matrimony with Tom sometime later, and Tom was another giant in Washington. But they were honoring both Tom Korologos and Anne McLaughlin Korologos. And when Anne came to talk, she kind of went through all these things that she had done in government. She wasn't bragging about it, other people talked about it. But she said of all of these things that she had done, the most memorable and the most rewarding was the 6 months that we had together on the Pan Am 103 Commission. She is always been involved in this. About 2 years ago, she said, what are we going to do for the 25th anniversary? And we kicked it around. We had a lot of thoughts. We had a couple of meetings. She wanted to get the band together, as John Belushi said, and get the whole commission together, and we couldn't find half of them. But she wanted to do something, and when it came time to pick the main speaker for this event, I said, there's really only one person we really need to get, and that's Anne McLaughlin Korologos. So let me give you Anne McLaughlin Korologos.
Thank you, Frank, for your kind introduction. You talk too much. He always did. He's like Kay Flynn, the Irish, you know, what can I tell you? They stick together. They were our conscience and our inspiration. The responsibility of leading the commission was much less daunting to me, as you can imagine, than it otherwise would have been, because Frank was by my side guiding the process and working directly with many of you here today. And as Brian said, Kay not only was our volunteer, PR, tenacious, expert at communications, she moved to Washington, which is the last thing I expected to happen as well. But the commission also benefited from having a small and dedicated group of public servants as its members. There were just 7 of us: Senator Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey, Senator Alphonse D'Amato of New York, Representative James Oberstar of Minnesota, Representative John Hammerschmidt of Arkansas, former Secretary of the Navy Edward Hidalgo, General Thomas Richards, who at that time was a retired Air Force general. And we were of different political parties, some active in politics and others not. We approached our task in a nonpartisan way, unified in our determination to find the truth. I am grateful to the commission members for their service and for having the courage to release a report that was fair, yet unsparing in its call for reform among all segments of the public and private sectors that influence the safety of U.S. civil aviation. As I was thinking about what I was going to say today, I was sorry that I was unable to touch base with Senator Lautenberg, who died this past June. Oh, I know he would have shared the sentiments I'm expressing to you today. Every year for the past 25 years, we've gathered on this day to formally remember the friends, family, and loved ones who died in that tragic event. Yet for each of you, the families of those we lost in the Pan Am 103 tragedy, this day is similar to every other day of the year, because the ones we lost are with us always. We often think about how nice it would be to share with them the joys and sorrows we've experienced every day since that time, or to relax with them at the end of the day and just talk. Wouldn't they marvel at the amazing feats of all the grandchildren that have come along in these years? Frank invited me to participate in this event because, as he noted, I was chairman of the President's Commission on Aviation Security and Terrorism. But I want you to know, however, that I am also here as someone who lost people with whom I was close on that terrible day. Long before I was asked to serve on the President's Commission, I learned the shocking news that my dear friends Kathleen and Jack Flynn had lost their son, whom I of course knew since he was born, JP. I then learned that Karen Noonan, a bright and promising young woman who worked for me as an intern that very summer at the Department of Labor, had also been aboard Pan Am 103. I'm of course comforted to have Kathleen and Jack Flynn and Karen's parents, Pat and Nancy Noonan, here today. And it's especially nice that they are joined by JP's brother Brian, who you've already met, who has chosen to be the incorrigible one in the family, as well as his twin sisters, Christy and Carrie, and my goodness, a myriad of grandchildren are all over here too. I think it's got to be close to 10. In addition, Karen Noonan's sister Dawn, her husband John, and 3 grandchildren of Pat and Nancy Noonan, who would have been, of course, Karen's 2 nephews and niece. So I'm here today as one of you, and like you, I have remembered the countless moments on countless days since then. Today, I think how proud our loved ones would be to see all that has been accomplished as a result of your sheer tenacity, how satisfied they would be with the miraculous resilience you have shown. Experts have long marveled at how some people are able to adapt and to rebuild their lives even after devastating tragedies. They have found that one of the most important factors contributing such resilience is having a supportive community of family and friends. You came together as strangers, united in your suffering. Over time, you became a community with a shared resolve to seek justice and reform. For 25 years, you have worked tirelessly together to help assure that our nation will do whatever it takes to bring terrorists to justice and prevent others from experiencing the unspeakable loss that you experienced. The exciting news this week that Libya is stepping up its assistance to the Lockerbie investigation is further testament to the power of your advocacy. As I reflect on the progress we've made in aviation security and the fight against terrorism, I see the roots of that progress in the more than 60 recommendations we brought forth in the report of the President's Commission. Although it was officially a report of the President, my colleagues and I always felt we were producing the report for you. Our intent was to give voice to your concerns, to honor you and your loved ones. We held 5 public hearings in 1989 and 1990 to hear testimony from a diverse group of individuals, officials from the Federal Aviation Administration and the U.S. Department of State, airline executives, pilots, flight attendants, and other members of the aviation community, aviation security experts, and many others. The very first people we heard from were members of the families of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103. Your heartfelt testimony, which you may remember, on November 17th, 1989, put everything we were to do subsequently into the proper context. I remember it as if it were yesterday. Perhaps the most moving aspect of our inquiry was the Commission's visit to Lockerbie, Scotland. We sought to understand the grief of this small town where 11 perished that day. What we found in the people of Lockerbie was a quiet grace. They shared your suffering and felt a deep bond with you. The commissioners were especially touched to see that the citizens of Lockerbie had carefully collected and tended to the personal belongings they found among the debris and safeguarded them until they could be returned to you. I'm so pleased, of course, to see Right Honorable David Mundell and Right Honorable Frank Mulholland here from Scotland. The ties between our countries, as evidenced today, is extraordinary. I will never forget the kindness and the decency of the people of Lockerbie. When the Commission's report to the President was released in May of 1990, I was gratified to hear from many of you that it was all that you had hoped it would be. You told me then that the report was a rallying cry. It became much more than that. It became an agenda for your advocacy. Just as we were beginning to see some advances in aviation security reforms, our nation was dealt another horrible blow on September 11th, 2001. In the days and weeks following the terrorist attack, I heard from many leaders who had turned anew to the findings of the President's Commission that we were so proud and privileged to have managed in those years previously. They told me they were startled to discover insights and analysis that eerily foreshadowed the events of that day. Our recommendations took on an even greater urgency after 9/11. And you all remained vigilant in your efforts to seek justice and advance reforms. 25 years ago, our nation was extremely vulnerable. We were naive about the threats we faced from forces we did not understand. Just like your loved ones did on that day, we all traveled freely without a second thought that we might be putting ourselves in harm's way. Today we are, sadly, a lot smarter about the threats we face. Aviation security has improved dramatically. We have a stronger resolve to fight terrorism in its ugly forms. Even back then, 1990, I quote from our report, we called for moral courage and political will of the country to, quote, pursue terrorists and responding swiftly and proportionately to their acts against humanity must become U.S. policy in deed as well as in word. What is required is action, not simply strong rhetoric. We collaborate now with other nations in that fight, and our law enforcement, justice, intelligence, and national security agencies collaborate better with one another. I'm especially proud that our nation's leaders now have a heightened sensitivity toward the victims of terrorist acts and a better understanding of how they should be treated. We have each of you to thank for keeping these issues in the forefront of our nation's policy agenda and for fostering real progress over the past 25 years. With humility and gratitude, I would like to close with 2 words the families, you, of victims of Pan Am 103 have not heard enough of. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
My name is Melanie Daniels, and my father, Bill, was on that plane. And I have the honor of introducing Deputy Chief Constable Ian Livingstone. Ian Livingstone has served as a police officer for over 20 years and has held a number of senior detective positions. In December 2012, Mr. Livingstone was given responsibility for crime and operational support for Police Scotland, the unified national policing agency for Scotland. Police Scotland has over 17,000 police officers and over 5,000 police support staff. He is a qualified lawyer and in 1998 was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to study criminal justice in the United States. Mr. Livingstone is deputy to Sir Stephen House, Chief Constable, and he has command of all criminal investigation resources in Scotland.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honoured and privileged to be here today representing the Police Service of Scotland. As you heard, the United Single Police Force created in the spring of this year from the merging of 8 V8 Scottish forces that existed at that time, including the Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary, which covered the Lockerbie area. The Police Service of Scotland and the people of Scotland who we serve will never forget the bombing that occurred at Lockerbie 25 years ago, causing the deaths of your loved ones. May I also take this opportunity to thank you sincerely for your kind words of support and fellowship following the crash in Glasgow 3 weeks ago of our Police Scotland helicopter. That tragically led to the death of 10 people, including 3 of our own officers. Your condolences and words of support were particularly touching and poignant. Thank you for that. And in my view, the sympathy you showed and what you expressed were typical of the lasting bonds and friendships formed from the tragedy of the Lockerbie bombing between Scotland and America, and specifically between the people of Lockerbie and many of you here today. Lasting bonds, ladies and gentlemen, and a shared commitment to see all those responsible for this crime against humanity brought to justice have also been forged between Scottish and American law enforcement agencies. I pay tribute to all serving and retired officers, agents, prosecutors, and many others who have shown diligence and personal commitment in this most challenging of investigations. And it is an investigation that I can categorically tell you remains active, live. The FBI and detectives within Specialist Crime Division of Police Scotland are in regular weekly contact, seeking every investigative opportunity that arises, and we will continue to do that with diligence. Together, we will work rigorously in pursuit of all those involved in carrying out the worst terrorist attack to have occurred in the United Kingdom. It is also clear that the events 21st December 1988 had a global impact that still resonates with people around the world today. Today is a day to remember, to reflect, to honour the victims and their families, and to look forward. Thank you very much indeed for your invitation to be here. It is a privilege to be with you today. Be assured, Police Scotland and the people of Scotland will never forget. And on behalf of the Police Service of Scotland, I bring a message of solidarity and a message of support to you today, and a pledge. We will continue to pursue justice in honour of those who died, on the 21st of December 1988. Thank you very much, and God bless.
And now I have the privilege of introducing the Right Honorable Frank Mulholland, QC, Lord Advocate. Mr. Mulholland graduated from Aberdeen and Edinburgh Universities, achieving LLB in 1981 and MBA in 1997. He joined the prosecution service as a procurator fiscal depute in Greenock in 1984. He went on to work in the Glasgow and Edinburgh offices before taking up posts in the Crown Office. In 1997, he became the first advocate depute to be appointed from the Procurator Fiscal Service. In 2000, he returned to the Procurator Fiscal Service as Assistant Procurator Fiscal in Edinburgh and was appointed Procurator Fiscal in Edinburgh in 2001. He returned to the ranks of Crown Counsel in 2003 as the first serving member of the Procurator Fiscal Service to be appointed Senior Advocate Depute. He was appointed Area Procurator Fiscal for Lothian and Borders in January of 2006, and in the same year qualified as an advocacy trainer in the National Institute of Trial Advocacy in Boston, USA. He was appointed Head of Advocacy Training in the same year. In 2007, he was appointed Solicitor General for Scotland, and in 2011, he was appointed Lord Advocate. During his career, he has dealt with some of the most difficult, complex, challenging, and high-profile cases, including HMA versus Transco, Larkhall gas explosion, HMA versus Tobin, murder of Vicky Hamilton, Beggs versus HMA, murder of Barry Wallace, Fraser versus HMA, murder of Arlene Fraser, HMA versus McCready, murder of Gary McDonald, HMA versus Blackburn, murder of Jessica McHugh, HMA versus Mack, murder of Edith Lansborough, HMA versus Brown, murder of Craig McKee, McDonald and others versus HMA, disclosure, and Ambrose versus Harris, admissibility of statements made in non-custodial setting. Mr. Mulholland is aged 54 and married with a son.
Actually, you're not alone. I started my career as in the role of Procurator Fiscal Depute at Greenock, which is a small town at the base of the Clyde. And on my first day, one of the residents of Greenock wanted to see me and said, "Oh, you're the prostituting fiscal." So, you're not alone. May I firstly just thank you for the warm welcome today. I'm truly humbled by the welcome of everyone. I was here 2 years ago, and let me tell you, the weather is a lot better than it was 2 years ago. As I said 2 years ago, thank you very much for reminding me of the Scottish weather. Can I thank you today for reminding me of what the summer looks like, because I'm not used to it in Scotland. I'm really delighted to be here. In Scotland, we've had on the television a number of documentaries in the past week, just showing the human stories, the goodness that's come out of this atrocity. And it left an indelible mark on me as a human being, and indeed my family. When I returned from the 23rd anniversary 2 years ago, I took with me a copy of the book which you prepared on Eagle's Wings, and I showed it to my wife, my son, and the wider Mulholland family, including my mum and dad, who retired to Spain seeking nice weather. They were all very touched, and they've asked me personally to thank you for allowing me to come and really commemorate your loved ones at the ceremony 2 years ago, and indeed today. Deputy Chief Constable Ian Livingston made a very good point. When I became Lord Advocate, one of the first things I did was to read very carefully the case papers and then meet with the police and prosecutors to try and determine a way forward to bring the others to justice. Now, I have been working tirelessly, along with others, to try and do that. And as you know, there's been some welcome news from Libya this week, which in law enforcement, both your government, your law enforcement and my law enforcement, we are determined to exploit. And we hope to visit Tripoli again next year, early next year, to try and move this matter forward. So I give you my renewed commitment that I believe in justice, and justice has been partially served in this case, but there's others that we wish to pursue, and I will do everything in my power as Lord Advocate to try and achieve that aim. Now, what I wanted to do, having attended 2 years ago and really learning and seeing the very moving event, the memorial service, I wanted to give you something for the 25th anniversary. Can we firstly have both Alan and Mark, if you'd like to come forward. What I wanted to do was to gift you a tribute, and there's no finer tribute in Scotland than a lament on our national instrument, the bagpipes. Both Pat Shearer, the former Chief Constable of Lothian and Borders Police, and I commissioned what's referred to as Lockerbie, a lament from the pipers of Dumfries and Galloway Scotland Pipe Band. We have two pipers here from the band. The first one is Alan Maltman, who is the composer of the lament, and to his right we have Detective Sergeant Mark Jackson, who is a serving police officer in Lockerbie, and both have travelled to Lockerbie to play it for the very first time. I can also tell you that almost simultaneously it is being played in Lockerbie itself for the first time. I should also record grateful thanks to Lockerbie Town Council, who have assisted greatly in the arrangements for the pipers to be here, and they send their deepest sympathies and warmest friendship to you at this time. The lament is a tribute to all who lost their lives in this terrible disaster, and to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, Lockerbie, a lament. Well, I hope you found that a fitting tribute to your loved ones. Can I announce that I spoke to the Deputy Archivist at your National Archive, and he is delighted and agreed to take the musical score for posterity. And I've spoken to our UK ambassador, who's agreed to hand that over to your National Archive. I also, finally, really want to present Mary Kay Stratis, who's here behind me with the score, Lockerbie Lament, composed by Pipe Sergeant Alan Maltman of Dumfries and Galloway Police Scotland Pipe Band. Mary Kay.
Thank you so much. Well, I have something for Frank Mulholland. I read about the Keeping the Spirit Alive award a little bit ago, and we are so deeply touched and moved by what Frank has done for us. The Lord Advocate has been such a dear friend to us, and he has indeed, especially with the lament given to us today, kept our spirit alive through what he has done, and the lives of our lost ones as well. Thank you very much for keeping the spirit alive.
Let us pray. As you depart this day in reflection and remembrance, may the love of God enfold you. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.